I'm a huge Saw fan, but I think most can admit who have seen the movies that after about the third movie, they kind of fell off a bit. They started to get boring and repetitive and I don't know, just not that creative. But after we thought the franchise would be over in Saw 3D, or as the secondary title is literally called Saw the Final Chapter, then we get Jigsaw in 2017. And I will admit, pretty good installment. It was unique in a good way. It was different than a lot of the other movies, and I will say it did revive the franchise a little bit. It's nothing groundbreaking, but a pretty good installment. So I was like, okay, until we got Spiral in 2021. Ugh. Yeah, it just wasn't good. It was just, how do I put it? It was just dumb. Like I don't know how else to put it.
It's so dumb.
It's so dumb, it's brilliant.
No! It's just dumb.
For those who haven't seen it, it's like it feels like a buddy cop movie, and it's with Samuel Jackson and Chris Rock, and I can't even remember a lot of it just because I just want to forget it. But I believe they were detectives, and for instance, a lot of the saw traps in the movie, you would only see the aftermath of it. You wouldn't see people actually struggling to get out of it. So it was just kind of boring, and of course it was different in a bad way. So luckily we're past that movie now, and we get Saw 10. And I gotta say, I rolled my eyes when I first heard this announcement. I was like, oh, come on, seriously, what could they possibly be doing with this one? Like, seriously. Until I heard that they were gonna bring back Tobin Bell as John Kramer and Shawnee Smith as Amanda Young. And I was like, okay, okay. But then I went into the theater with still pretty low expectations, just considering the franchise's recent track record. But I will say I was pleasantly surprised from what I saw. So now I will be explaining why I believe that Saw 10 is one of the best Saw movies. Only, I'd say, behind probably the third one, which in my opinion is the best, and I think it's definitely one of the strongest ones. And of course the OG, because nothing can really beat the OG in most franchises, but still definitely one of the best ones. But before I get into it, just want to say that there will be spoilers in this video. So if you guys haven't seen the movie, definitely go check it out before this. And then I'll also say there'll be mild spoilers for, I'd say, about the first three movies mostly. But yeah, definitely go check those out as well if you haven't already. All right, so let's get into it. So to start, the film begins with John Kramer being told that he only has a few months to live due to a tumor in his brain caused by terminal brain cancer. And for those who have seen most of the other movies, would be a little confused by this because it's first revealed in Saw 2 that he has cancer. So just to clarify, this movie takes place in between the first and second one. So there you go. Anyways, the movie proceeds by John exiting his hospital room and witnesses a janitor steal some stuff from a patient's room. So then it immediately cuts to that same janitor in a trap. And basically he has two tubes connecting to his eye sockets going around the room, and all of his fingers are bound. And basically to escape, he has to press a button and break all of his fingers. Pretty gruesome, I know, but it's Saw, so what did you expect? Anyways, yeah, so he fails the trap, he runs out of time, and so he gets both of his eyeballs sucked out, and then it immediately cuts again to the previous scene. And it turns out that the janitor thought about it, and he was like, you know what, no, this is wrong. So he puts the stuff back, and then John goes up to him, and he's like, good choice. So I thought this led for a pretty funny moment. It was just kind of a fake out, and I don't know, it was something different. It was just kind of refreshing, so I just thought that was a funny moment they did. But anyways, after that, John discovers this experimental cancer treatment group, and he visits them in New Mexico City, and he pays for a surgery, and they're one of a kind. They can heal almost any cancer. And so he goes through the surgery, he meets the team, the lead doctor, Cecilia Peterson, with a bunch of other team members. It's still a pretty small group though, but they seem legit, right? So they're not legit. If you've seen Saw 2, you kind of already saw it coming. you're like, okay, there's no way it could be healed, because why would he still have the cancer in Saw 2? So a lot of people saw this coming, but I will say it was a very good setup for the rest of the movie. And that is a big complaint that I hear people saying for this movie, probably the biggest complaint, that, you know, the first act is unneeded, it's slow, it's boring, nothing much happens. And while I can kind of see where they're coming from, it also it's really good storytelling, and it does set up for a very good payoff. And I really like how they humanize John Kramer. Basically, they show that he has just all the same emotions that we do, even though he's the main antagonist for most of the rest of the movies. We see him in this light that's different usually. I mean, he's just going about his life. He's just trying to survive, you know. So it's very different, and I like how they make him the main character in this. Anyway, so yeah, it all turned out to be a scam. He got conned, and after I saw this, I was like, oh man, they do not know what they just got themselves into. So it, you know, like I said, the first act, it's a good payoff. You get really excited to see what happens after that. And just to kind of explain how he found out about the con, he goes back to the facility to just give a gift to one of the people that was really nice to him in the group. And you know, the place is abandoned, it's trash. So then he takes the bandages off of his head, and I mean, he still has hair and everything. There's no signs of surgical marks or anything. So that's how he finds out. And so what does he do? Well, what do you think he does? He kidnaps everybody and then puts them in traps. I don't know what else you expect from it. So then it turns out that John had an accomplice in abducting these people, and it turns out to be none other than Amanda Young. And I love the return of Amanda. I've always thought she was a really good character and just very interesting, because she kind of acts as a foil for John in a way. And to explain, they agree on a lot, and a lot on the same philosophies, but they do differ slightly in some scenarios. For instance, in this movie, when all the con artists are put through the traps one by one, Amanda picks out one of these girls that she doesn't believe is truly deserving of going through one of these traps. But the rest can go through it. But she tries to beg John to get this girl out. She doesn't think she needs to go through this. But of course, John's like, no, they all had a part in it. They're all going to go through the same thing. So John Kramer's philosophy in the movies have always been, if you truly care about life and you truly want to live, then you're going to escape the trap. And even if that means giving up things, usually body parts or multiple body parts, sacrifices. John has always thought of himself as kind of a therapist, if you will. And, not really the one I would want to sign up for, but apparently a lot of other people do, because as we know in the other movies, John has had a lot of associates. And if you don't remember or just don't know, Amanda herself was one of the first victims of Jigsaw. And she, after escaping the trap, she understood his philosophy and wanted to follow in his footsteps, so she became one of his first accomplices. And also, I gotta say, they got really creative with the traps in this one. They were so gag-worthy, and my booty was clenched the entire time during these traps. Like, they were crazy. So props to the team for coming up with those very unique traps. They were very different, but usually that is a good thing in the Saw movies. They usually do have a very big variation in how the traps are designed. There are very few that seem kind of similar. So, but yeah, this one definitely doesn't stray away from that. So, after the same girl that I mentioned earlier, the one that Amanda was concerned for, who thought she didn't deserve to go through the traps unlike the others, well, that same girl was the very first one to successfully escape her trap, which then only left one other person to go through theirs, being the head doctor, Cecilia. And before she could get started, the place got broken into by this guy named Parker. And Parker turned out to be also in on the con. And John didn't think to get this guy. He didn't think he was actually in on it. And Parker's role was acting as if he was one of the people in surgery as well, a fellow patient, to just kind of seal the deal and make sure John didn't have any questions or doubts, just to make it more believable. Anyways, Yeah, so you're probably now wondering how Parker even found the place to begin with. Well, it's pretty funny. So Cecilia shows a different side of herself. She basically gets the body of one of the girls who failed her trap. She gets the body, she cuts open her stomach, and she takes out all the organs and uses it as an Indiana Jones whip and whips it over and grabs this big cart in the middle of the room that has all of the victims' possessions on it. And so she gets her phone and she calls the guy. And yeah, they also turn out to be lovers. What? Yeah, I know. It's crazy. I don't know. It was just kind of funny seeing this, just seeing this woman completely emotionless just take out this girl's organs and then using it as like a rope. It was just kind of a funny scene. But, and then I was also like, okay, why is this cart here? Like with everybody's possessions in the middle of the same exact room that they're all in. Of course, all of the victims were chained up, so they couldn't get to it. But still, like, why was it there with them? But, you know, I've seen a Saw movie or two, so I was like, oh, okay. You know what? This is probably here for a reason. Yeah. Anyways, Parker holds Amanda and John at gunpoint and forces them to free Cecilia. And the second that Cecilia gets free, she brutally stomps on the neck of the one girl that actually survived her trap. I guess just to display how evil she was and how she's not to be underestimated. But yeah, this was just a big surprise moment, and it really made you have it out for her and Parker now. So then they force John to play his own game, and it turns out that the trap actually requires two people. So Cecilia again does something just you would not expect at all. She abducts this kid from outside the building and forces him to play the game. And John actually meets this kid earlier in the movie just for a few moments. I think he like fixes up his bike or something, but yeah, they kind of know each other. Anyway, so yeah, those two are now forced to play the game. And what it is it's like a seesaw. So one person on each side, and they each have a button. And I can't remember if it makes them go up or down, but either way, when they press the button, there's like just a constant like stream of blood that like flows from the ceiling, and it basically goes on their nose and just their whole face, and it makes them unable to breathe. So I guess the point of the game was to see how well people could work under dire circumstances or just stressful situations, and see, you know, either who's the last one that could survive, or could they both actually survive, and see, you know, if they could, you know, really work together. But anyways, so yeah, now these two are forced to do that. But John Kramer, Jigsaw, being the mastermind that he is, predicts the entire scenario that happens. And so Cecilia and Parker go into the other room that John and Amanda were in, like spectating all this happening, all the traps. They go into the other room, they collect the money that, you know, John took back from them for his surgery. They go back and take the money, but when they take the money, it triggers another trap in that room. And so those two are forced into the room with toxic gas seeping through. And so the only way to avoid it is there's this one hole in the room for one person, and they can stick their head out of and, you know, breathe and not get affected by the gas. And so it turns into a fight to the death, and Cecilia is left the last survivor in the games, because she doesn't even hesitate to kill this guy. I mean, they were lovers, but she doesn't even hesitate, while of course he does. So it just, you know, another display of how like just evil she is. Like, it's very unexpected. Like like wow, it was crazy. So yeah, she turns out to be the last one alive, and the movie ends with, of course, that when they pulled the money, it also stopped the other trap from happening. So Amanda, John, and the kid are set free. They leave the place with Cecilia's fate being left ambiguous. She's just left in prison in the room, and so the other three, they leave, and John gives the kid the money, and that's how it ends. And so I thought it was a very interesting ending. I kind of had mixed emotions on it. For starters, I think everybody wanted Cecilia to die the most after, the third act of the movie. Like wow, she turned out to be the unexpected, like, major antagonist at this point. And so if anybody would have failed the traps, it would have been her, but she's the only one left alive. But actually, it makes it kind of interesting because maybe she comes back for future installments or something. So you never know. Though the more I think about it, the more I actually kind of like how she survived, because it just kind of shows how some people really are that selfish and just straight up vile. But if John's philosophy is they deserve to live if they escape the trap, well, I mean, this lady's anything but, right? So I think she might be kind of a wild card, and this could be an interesting future installment because John could question his own philosophy on this one. He could be like, well, I mean, all this lady is gonna be is just bent on revenge. Like, I mean, I can't see her doing anything else. So, I mean, after some people were in the traps, like Amanda, I mean, they converted, and I mean, they were accomplices to Jigsaw. But I feel like this lady would just straight up be, maybe a potential future antagonist. But that's weird because isn't Jigsaw supposed to be the main antagonist in all the movies? And even though he is presented more in a, I wouldn't say protagonist, because still a pretty evil guy, right? He just has a really skewed sense of morality, but he still was better in this movie than others, which just makes it so interesting. But he is supposed to be the antagonist in this movie, right? Right? Exactly. I think that the reason this film is such a strong addition to the franchise and why it's just so good to begin with is because it really makes you question the morality of so many different things, partly due to John being so fleshed out, especially in the first act, and you being able to almost sympathize with him to a degree. And of course, another factor being that Cecilia takes on an even more antagonistic role than Kramer in this one, which makes it really interesting. So it just kind of blurs the lines between good and evil, and right and wrong. So it's just kind of like, who should you root for? Should you root for the victims, kind of like Amanda, had her own questions like, do they truly deserve to go through this? Or should you root for Jigsaw? Or should you even root for, Amanda, who we learned later, in the other films, especially in the third one, who kind of has an agenda of her own, and she kind of develops more and more a philosophy of her own, differing to John's. And, it turns out that she makes certain traps, unbeatable for some people, depending on, maybe she thinks that this one person did something like, okay, they can have a chance, but this other person, no, their act was atrocious and they deserve to die. So she's just gonna, make him go through the trap and just to kill him. So they just do so well with just making you question, making you just think about it and just being like, huh, what do I do? So overall, I thought this movie did a great job of standing out from the rest on its own. It made you conflicted on who to root for and made you question the morality of things, so it was a very active experience watching it. The traps were especially disgusting in this one and creative, just very unique, especially from a lot of the rest. I mean, like I said earlier, I mean, they usually do keep it pretty consistent on how different they are, but especially this one, they were pretty gross. But that's what it's all about in these movies. So there's that, and of course it was just very entertaining, but also very stressful. And of course it was great to see these, but well, I probably shouldn't use the word beloved, but these popular characters come back, as in John Kramer and Amanda Young. It's always fascinating seeing the dynamic between the two. Anyways, guys, so let me know what you thought in the movie in the comments down below. And if you weren't already convinced that this is one of the best installments in the franchise, well, I hope I did now, or at the very least, I made sense as to why I think so. But yeah, that's about it. I'll see you guys in the next one. Catch you later.